we've been kind of going at it for pretty much since the guys got here, June 20th. We've had to reevaluate how we go about preparing for a year, the way we broke things up, because we basically didn't have our spring and summer, no different than everybody else. So we've tried to create an atmosphere where we adjusted the fall to become our summer, and luckily the season got pushed back a couple weeks, and which now allows us to get rolling as if we usually do, just later rather than the 2 weeks earlier than we usually do. So with all that said, excited for the season. The one thing that getting back on the court and practicing, it's brought tremendous relief, joy to myself, my staff, and the players. This is what we all sign up to do, and when we can do this, regardless of the stresses of a season, the camaraderie, the being a part of a group of guys that are all working for a common theme, makes us all feel normal, for lack of better words. So excited for what this team can be, excited for the opportunities that hopefully we get to play. I've the one thing I've resigned and accepted is that I'm not going to allow any COVID stories. That means cancellation of a game. We don't get to play the whole season that we put the schedule together for. What do I mean by that? Instead of playing 27 games, we get to play 23 games. I'm not going to allow any of that stuff to dampen my emotions, my enthusiasms for the opportunities that we hopefully get to play basketball again. So excited, and away we go. So more than happy to speak about left tackles if anyone's interested.
Dave, we'll have you go first.
Hey, Frank, great to see you again. It has been way too long of a time. Just wanted to ask, how are you feeling, after the COVID diagnosis and getting the new knee in? How are you feeling going into the season?
Yeah, the knee feels great. I no one that ever went through it told me what those 6 weeks post-surgery feels like. And it beat me up pretty bad, but the pain is gone. I lived with pain, and my leg was every year got more crooked, and I couldn't fully extend it, and I was struggling to sleep because of the pain, and now all that's gone. So it's the knee's doing a lot better. COVID, I think I'm all right. It's just days I feel weird. I can't give you. It's not that I feel bad. I just feel weird, and it's that time period. I don't know what it did, but it's attacked my hair. That's one of the reasons I'm wearing a ball cap. I've got a bad case of alopecia going on, so I've lost hair all around my head and back of my head and the sides at the top. It's the one spot all of us, Phil, you know what I'm talking about. We all get up here. That comes with age. I had that one. That one's just normal, but you'll see it once we get around each other at games, and all. Back of my head's got like spots of hair. So, but if that's the worst thing that happens to me, I'm one lucky individual. So it's that's the way I'm looking at it. But I appreciate you asking, Dave. I feel good.
Pete.
Frank, a couple of quick ones. Has anybody opted out on the season yet, or have you talked to anybody who's thinking about it? And what is your practice going to be like? You guys are so hands-on and in everybody's faces. How have you kind of changed up maybe some practices in this kind of a COVID world?
Yeah, the first part, the answer is no. No one's opted out. We had those conversations back in August when the school year actually started. We haven't had them again. Obviously, that's a conversation that we will have again, especially once this council decides whether or not because the athletes in the fall and athletes in the spring have all been given that year of eligibility back. Men's and women's basketball are like the only two sports that, because we're actually right in the middle, and we're like two of the few sports that has not been given that opportunity yet. So they're ruling on it. Once that ruling goes through, that's a conversation that we'll have again. I don't foresee anyone on our team opting out, but I don't want to speak for the players. I mean, that is their fundamental right, and that's their decision. And I'm not into talking people out of doing what they feel is best for themselves.
Yeah.
Right now we get tested once a week. Pretty soon I think next week we start getting tested twice a week. And then once November 25th gets here, when games actually start, we'll be tested 3 times a week. And the only thing I've had to adjust, Pete, is early on, we did everything in pods. So if someone tested positive, we didn't have to shut everything down. But now we've gotten closer. We no longer have those opportunities because we got to start preparing. I've adjusted our there's a 48-hour window that you got to have from the last time you were around everybody to you get tested. So, for example, we test Monday mornings. So we finish our team workouts. We rarely work out on Saturday until it gets for real here next week. But we've had a couple Saturday workouts. So we'll finish early enough on Saturday. We're testing is 48 hours removed from the end of that practice. And then on Monday, we still do group workouts instead of doing the whole team at once while we wait for results. Once we get more testing, then we don't have to worry about that because we'll be tested more frequently.
Thanks.
Yep.
Mike Uva.
Frank, with COVID pushing a lot of things back this year, especially with the NBA, as the months went on, looking at AJ's situation, how were those conversations as it, just kept getting closer to, your season starting up, and just how excited are you to be able to have him back this year?
Yeah, extremely excited because AJ is a real good basketball player. I mean, I told somebody, some national guy had me on the phone a couple of weeks ago. I told him, I said, how many guys in the SEC or any Power 5 conference is a 2-year starter that's averaged over 13 points a game back-to-back years? I mean, he's one of the few guys in the country that can claim that. Yet he might be the most underappreciated returning real good player in the country. The NBA pushing everything back the way they did was, and by the way, a real good player on a good basketball team, not just a guy with nice stats on a team that couldn't beat anybody. But with the NBA pushing everything back, I don't want to say it helped us, but it created confusion and lack of clarity because he couldn't go in for workouts. The NBA created a second tier combine. It has the main combine. It's got this other one, and I'm pretty sure he got invited to that other one, but he had no interest in that. The deeper it went into the summer, and I said this with Chris before, when Chris went through this, the great thing here is that he's had a great experience here. He loves it here. He knows that he's young and he continues to get better as a player, and he feels that us as a coaching staff, we've helped him. And from our side, he's a special young man. I mean, he's a heck of a player that's got a special spirit about him. He's got a joy as to the way he carries himself that makes everyone happy. You got to have people like that in your life. And so for us, it's an easy decision. For him, it was a complicated decision. But at the same time, it's not like he was trying to run away from here. Sometimes guys turn pro, and even though everyone tells them not to or whatever it may be, because they don't want to stay where they were at. He wasn't running away from here, but his dream of playing in the NBA, that's been part of the conversation with him and his family since the day we recruited him, the day we signed him, the day he completed his freshman year, and we continue to have those conversations. But I he puts in the work, and I know as a staff, we're going to do everything we can to help him continue to grow so he can achieve that dream one day.
Colin?
Yeah, Frank, kind of usually at this point you have your schedule kind of put together and you're ready to go. Just what has it been like trying to schedule now with these things, and how close are you guys to being able to release, I guess, your full non-con schedule?
It's not like you're going to be around. You get married. So
Get married Saturday. I mean, we'll be around.
I know you get married Saturday. So it really doesn't matter what games we put together and when we play. You're not coming unless your wife signs a field trip form. I mean, it's simple as that. You know,
Remember, she can call you. That way you can officially approve it. How about that?
Congratulations, by the way, Colin. I can't tell you what it's going to be for you, but it's the best thing that ever happened to me. So I hope your marriage is healthy and tremendous, and you guys are awesome together. But yeah, the schedule. Here's the problem. Too many people started putting out all these fake scenarios and about bubbles and all this other nonsense that, you know, the whole summer. It was all garbage. That wasn't coming from anywhere. It wasn't coming from anyone that said basketball next to their name. That was coming from event promoters and different people who are trying to create and invent without knowing what our own conferences were going to do yet. You know, the whole time we were waiting for our conferences to meet and make decisions. Our conference was not going to make those decisions while they were still trying to get the fall sports to get going. Once that took place, then they put their attention on ours. I thought they made what our league did was tremendous. I thought they allowing us to play a game in December, which then opens up a window for makeup games at the end of the year. I thought that was a great decision because we're dealing with an unknown. So if we play all 18, we get to rest a little bit at the end of the year. If you played 16, you got to figure out a way to get 2 makeup games at the end of the year. So it gives us flexibility for us to control our league schedule, which is the one thing we can control. Then the non-league schedule, what happened was real simple, is any game that was scheduled prior, that was on contract prior to November 25th was null and void. So then you move from November 25th forward. Then you have the MTEs. The MTEs all started scrambling to change their dates and trying to figure out a way to continue to exist. We all have the whole travel situation, and it's not just the travel and the hotels and the buses and the planes, but you got to make sure that you're going to go play against people that are being tested too. Last thing you need to do is we're spending $1 gazillion on testing our athletes, and we play a school that never tests anybody, which by the way does happen. And now our guys get infected, and now we pop on our own testing, and we're withheld because of who we played against. So it's a little more complicated. But with all that said, we're actually in deep conversations with a school to solidify the November 25th start date here at home. And as soon as that name is on the contract, the schedule's done. And I'm pretty sure that will happen today. So I would, like at our school, our schedule has to go through legal and all kinds of stuff before we can publicize it. So I would anticipate that because of the proximity to the beginning of the season, that all that will take place faster rather than it has in the past. And we should have something out by the latest early next week. That would be my guess, but I don't work at the other departments that have to approve the schedule.
Gene?
Hey, Frank, I know you got a lot of on-court things to think about, but what would be like the best model for fans at the games that you'd like to see?
Gene, I go back and forth on that a whole lot. Excuse me. Because the fans really don't impact us. It's not, we're not going to get sick because there's fans at the game. It's a fan on fan exposure. It's the fan on the usher, the concession worker, whatever. That's where the concern's at. We'll be shielded because even if there's fans allowed in the arenas, they're not going to be allowed anywhere near the bench. So there's going to be separation there. But I've gone back and forth on this, Gene. You guys help me out here. I put on the Texas A&M football game against Florida this weekend. It didn't look like there was a whole lot of social distancing going on. It didn't look like 20,000. It looked like 60, 70,000 to me. But, so I don't know, Gene. I think we should have fans at the game. How many? I kind of leave that out there. I know this. People are allowed to go to bars. People are allowed to go to restaurants. People are allowed to, do all kinds of stuff, but don't go to a sporting event. That's a major problem. That's where I'm telling you I get confused and I go back and forth on this. I don't know how I feel about this, but I hope we have fans. I really do. I wouldn't want to, watching the NBA and the bubble with nobody and the virtual fans. That baseball. I just saw a baseball game yesterday. I think they let some people in the game. That's so much better than watching games in empty arenas. And I get it now. I get it. It's a safety issue. I get it. I fully understand. But at the same time, if there's a way to make it happen, I'd like to have some people at the games.
Also, I think I know the answer to this, but just to kind of cross the T, you can't have close scrimmages with other teams before the start of the season, or can you?
Yes, we can, but they would count as one of the 27 games.
Okay.
So in the past, we got whatever plus an exhibition and a scrimmage or two scrimmages or two exhibitions. Now we're getting 27. And if you want to take one of those games and make it an exhibition game, you can. If you want to make it a scrimmage, you can.
Okay, John?
To follow up real quick on that, do you plan on having one of the closed door games that would count against your 27?
No. I might have an exhibition game with a local school, just to give them an opportunity to help their budget and to create some interest here in town. But that's still up for discussion. It's everything. That game will either be an exhibition game or a count game.
Gotcha.
To be clear on my answer. I'm not sure which way I'm going to go on that yet. I'm leaning to making it an exhibition game, but we'll see what happens.
Gotcha. And I feel like you had a pretty deep squad of guards last year, and you were happy with how those guys played and developed. And you added another piece in seventh to that this year. What does that do for you as a coach in terms of your comfort level? Does it create a little anxiety on how to keep everybody happy and get everybody minutes? What does that do for you when you have such a deep pool of guards?
Yeah, John, I've never been one to worry about keeping people happy. They should be equally concerned about keeping me happy. It's the idea here is that we've all signed up to be a part of something together. And their job is to play, and my job is to make decisions. And the better they play, the easier my decisions are. The more of them that play the game the right way, the harder my decisions get. But at the end of the day, my decisions are not made to make guys happy. My decisions are made to help us win the next game on the schedule. And their commitment to play should be to help our team move forward and support my decisions, just like I support them as players. And so that's the way I approach it. Those are my conversations with players all the time along those lines. When as a coach, you start worrying about who plays, who don't play, and keeping guys happy, it takes the focus away from becoming a very good basketball team. And it takes the focus away from winning. And, I know this, John, I don't know about you. Ain't too many people ever worried about keeping me happy. Whether we're doing things the right way or the wrong way, whether we're winning, losing, in my walk of life, ain't too many people ever put their arm around my shoulder and say, Frank, you happy today? We sign up to coexist with each other, to help each other grow and challenge each other, to try and become the best team that we can. And in that journey, I've never been I've never worried about that. To give you a better, clear answer, I much rather sit around and try to figure out who to play than to be caught like I was a couple years ago, where you got to go to Missouri and A&M back-to-back games and you got 8 guys in uniform. That's because you've got no answers now. You got answer A, and answer A doesn't work. There's no answer B, and so I'm real happy with our depth. I'm real happy. 7th has been great. 7th is I mean, I'm not into predicting, but I think he's going to have a real good year.
Mitch?
Coach, you talk about challenges and challenging each other. Obviously, you lost Mike Kotsar and the energy and production he brings, but also senior veteran leadership. Is there anybody you're challenging or on the team this year to kind of step up and be a leader, or is that kind of something that they've all collectively said, we're going to get together and just create this cohesion of leadership?
Yeah, I've never pushed anyone to be a leader. I've always believed that that's something that everyone signs up for. You know, when they sign up for it, then it's my job to help them in that journey, but not kind of challenge them to become somebody that they don't want to be. You know, you got to have great followers to be good too. You can't just, you know, we all always tooting the horn of leadership. Yeah, that's extremely important, but the followers are just as important. You know, because if you got a bunch of followers that all they do is question leadership, then your leadership stinks and you're not going to be very successful. But when you got leadership and then you got followers that are supportive of the leadership, then you got a chance to be pretty good. And I like what we got in place from a leadership standpoint. We've got guys that are really taking on responsibility. Some of them, you know, it's sometimes you can do it as a freshman. Sometimes you kind of wait your turn. And Justin Minaya has been tremendous the whole preseason, as far as not just playing, but his willingness to share his voice with everybody, his willingness to get people where they belong, to keep people upbeat, to accept coaching. You know, because that's a big part of leadership, is that you accept coaching. You know, too many people these days run away from coaching, or, you know, he accepts coaching, and he doesn't run away from the difficulty of a moment, and that's what generates the respect of his teammates. But Justin's been real good with that. You know, Jermaine continues to mature, so hopefully he can, because he's got the courage to lead. He just has to be more consistent with how he goes about it. You know, last year I made no secrets about it. He gave us a confidence in the middle of the year that we needed. He gave us an arrogance that we needed. You know, now there's no game, so there's other things that go into the equation, and he's got to continue to grow into that responsibility, if that's one of leadership that he wants. AJ Lawson, we talked about earlier. You know, AJ's not going to be yelling at anybody about doing something, but he's connected to the coaches. He understands what we do, and he brings an enthusiasm to every drill, every practice, every day. And that's leadership too. That makes other guys understand, like, here's the leading scorer for 2 years in a row, and this is how excited he is about running this 2-on-2 drill that I don't like. Well, heck, maybe I need to follow his lead, and that enthusiasm, maybe it'll make it better for me too. So all those things, those are 3 guys that come to mind as far as their willingness to embrace those roles. You know, and but we've got some experienced guys. We've you know, Keyshawn Bryant's been real good. You know, he's become a lot more vocal. He grew up a lot last year. He's not there yet, but he's starting to accept a lot more responsibility. And so I think there's going to be options to pick from there. And I think the personalities on our team also connect. At least that's the vibe I'm getting right now. But I've told you guys before, we all hug and love each other and high five one another, and it all looks real good until they throw that ball up for real. And then you start really understanding who lines up where. And that's every season teaches every team. I've said this before, to become either a winning team or a losing team. And I like where we're at, and I'm excited, and I think I know what's going to happen, but I'm not into predicting the future either.
Ben?
Hey, Coach. I kind of wanted to ask, with kind of the set of guards that you guys have, plus having Justin and Keyshawn, could this be one of maybe your more flexible rosters in terms of lineups that don't necessarily have two bigs, just because of kind of the set of experience you're bringing back from a lot of those more perimeter positions?
Yeah, I mean, all that'll continue to unfold. I mean, I thought last year we kind of made that adjustment midstream a little bit, and we played really, really well. When Justin hurt his thumb against, I think it was Missouri, if I remember correctly, we had won 3 consecutive home conference games. 2 of the 3 were up 30. You know, we were really, really playing well. I mean, we were rolling. Like I was going home and I was watching film. I'm saying, we got this thing figured out here. We got a chance to get this thing done the right way again. And then boom, down goes Justin, who's the guy that gave us that flexibility to play a little smaller, but not lose the physicality. And, and then the same day we lose Justin, we lose Jayla Mccreary, who was in and out of the lineup because of all kinds of little nagging injuries and concussion. And so we're undermanned again. And, so then we had to kind of go back to playing Wildens and Alonzo in there at the same time, which is fine. Last year we kind of went back and forth a little bit. This year, I'm not. Yes, it gives us versatility, and it allows us to play 2 different ways. And it's not the depth of guards, is Justin Minaya. You know, his ability to play without us. I don't want to lose. When I say playing small, I don't want to lose physicality. Now, there's physicality in all kinds of different things. The one physicality that I don't never want to lose is our ability to offensive rebound. Justin was our leading offensive rebounder. And when we lost him from the lineup, that void, it took away that physicality. And so I think we're going to be able to play different ways. And that's something that excites me, because that means we can match up with different styles.
Michael?
Hey, Frank, thanks for doing this today. Obviously the NBA, as far as, it stands out for the bubble and everything they've done during the coronavirus, but also for just Black Lives Matter front and center in the NBA. You see all the different names on the jerseys and things like that. And I know you're part of the racial reconciliation and one of the co-chairs on that committee. And I was just curious if you could shed any light on some of the discussions that you guys have had, or some of the things that have come to fruition because of that, or maybe some of the things that you're excited about going forward with that.
Yeah, I mean, our players and we speak about those things like forever. That's all. I've always been talking to our players since my high school days about that kind of stuff. The NBA is different than college basketball. And you probably sit there saying, what way? Well, the NBA is pretty much represents 32 different men that own their teams. And it's its own entity. It doesn't represent a state. It doesn't represent a whole community. It doesn't represent, we're a little different. We're a state university. There's different things, different people. So we got to be a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't say careful, because careful is not the right word. We understanding of who we represent when we're at work. And so, but yes, those conversations with the players always are taking place. I'm a big believer in them. I'm a big believer in, in understanding the issues in society, because it's my job to help educate these guys to get on the street one day and become a man and deal with whatever's in front of them, so they don't throw in the towel and they get over whatever hurdle so they can find success. And so it's neat. You learn a lot about players. By the way, for all you guys on the call, I'm sure you guys are aware of this, but I would strongly recommend that you guys watch the documentary called Social Dilemma. Strongly recommended. It's social media has created a major problem in our country, and too many people, especially the age group of our players, educate themselves by the gossip of social media, by the falsehoods that are shared on social media. So we have deep conversations to speak about the truth, to speak about the journey, to speak about what's real and what's not real. So our guys don't fall prey or victim to the narratives that are created in social media, but the realities that we as people actually live with every single day. So, but it'll continue to take place. Michael, I'd rather you ask players that, because I don't want to ever disclose their opinions on our conversations. If they want to, that's on them. I'm the one that's 54, collects a salary. They can share my opinion all you want. I'd rather keep my conversations with them on those topics private as far as their views. But I'm excited. I think those things are powerful. I think it allows me to understand them. It allows them to understand each other, because, like, for example, Mike Kotsar, his freshman year, he was sitting in a locker room and he's saying, like, what are these guys talking about? Because he just got here from Estonia, and he didn't understand some of the things that me and Sindarius and Dwayne and guys were talking to. He couldn't comprehend. So it was neat. And then he interjected, like, what it's like in Estonia. So it allowed us to understand, like, okay, he's got no idea some of the things that we deal with and some of the views that we have and why. So we have to help him. And he was humble enough that he was willing to learn. And I'll leave you with this on that topic, Michael. I think we forget, and this is one thing I've told our players, and I will share this because this is my view on all this. I live in the South now. If I thought I was going to bring my Miami ways to change the South, they should have put me in a bag and sent me back to Miami. In the South, there's a way of life in the South, and those of us that come from other places to here, it's up to us to adapt to the cultures and the values of the people in the South. If I don't like it, I can move to the Northeast, I can move to the West or the Midwest, where maybe what I think should happen and how life should be. But the one thing that this country has never done, the South has never made people from California live differently, even though we do have different lifestyles and different values and within our own country, which is so unique to the rest of the world. People in the Northeast live life and believe in things differently than people in the Midwest. So, people in the Northeast don't force the Midwest to live a certain way. I think we've gotten away from that, and we try to tell each other in this country how we should live, rather than continuing to understand that that's the beauty of this country, is that even though we're all Americans, there's still different ways of life in different parts of this country. And which is so unique to any other country in America, in the world. Everywhere else, everyone lives under the same values, same culture. And but that's, sorry if I got off topic, but that's kind of one of the topics that I've been sharing with our players a whole lot lately.
Scott?
Hey, Frank, thanks for doing this. Just a quick question for you. Obviously, college basketball kind of rocked last week with the Greg Marshall story. I was wondering, you're a hard coaching guy. Has there been discussions with coaches and other coaches about changing the way coaches coach or how they're perceived when they're coaching players hard and whatnot? Have there been any discussions within the coaching ranks about, the new, world we live in?
No, I've never been in Greg's locker room. I've never been in his timeouts, so I've got no idea what his relationship is with his players, just like he's got no relationship with mine is with my players. We're all unique. We're all different. We tend to put everyone, we try, it gets back to what I was just talking about, different parts of the country. We're trying to force everybody to be the same and act the same. That's not how we function. That's not our world. Whether I sit there on the bench and cross my hands and clap and smile, or I stand up and yell, which is who I am, whichever one it is, the bottom line is, are we impacting the lives of people in a positive way? If we are, then we recruit them. They fit who we are. We fit who they are. it's all good. We don't have to teach everyone the same way. Everyone has different styles, different values, different needs, different wants. We don't all have to act and look the same for things to be successful. The one thing that has no place in our business is if you make people feel this big. That's a problem. We're in this for education, which is about making people feel better, giving them confidence, making them grow, not about anything else. And but as coaches, I am who I am. I'm different than Bob Huggins, but everyone wants to put me and Hugs in the same box because he yells and I yell. We're two different people. We make decisions that are completely different on similar topics. That doesn't make him right and me wrong or vice versa. He's a brother to me. He's helped my career like anything, but I'm not Bob Huggins and he's not Frank Martin. We handle things differently. But everyone thinks that we're one and the same because we both yell. And that's the biggest phallus that exists from people on the outside when they're passing judgment on coaches. We're all different. Why? Because our players are different. And if someone's doing something that's I don't know what the word, inhumane, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, that's making things wrong. I mean, just doing things that are wrong that I wouldn't want done to my own child. I got 3 kids. I've got to father my 3 children in 3 different ways. So when they go to college and they play sports, they're going to need 3 different kind of coaches, and they're all raised by me and my wife. Yet, so it's, it's the way it works. But no, we don't sit around and have those conversations about, hey, they're writing articles about that guy. So since I'm a yeller, I have to be careful. No, you do right by people in life. Who cares what the people that are not in my locker room, that are not in my office, that are not in the timeouts, who cares what they think? Who cares whether they like me or not? The bottom line is the people that I recruit, do they have good experiences? The A.J. Lawsons of the world, when they're faced with difficult decisions, do they say, man, I can't stand that guy, man. He makes me feel bad, and leave? Okay, then I need to pay attention to that. Or does he say, I love it there. That's my guy. Well, then obviously whatever I'm doing connects with players. And so it has to work for me. Because it works for me doesn't mean it works for somebody else. I don't know if I answered your question, Scott, but
yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that was exactly what I asked. Yeah, for sure.
Phil?
All right, hang on. Okay, there we go. I was going to ask you about that Alabama-Georgia game coming up.
On three. Hot.
The hair looks good. Nothing wrong with the hair. It looks fine.
They can call us twins now.
Oh, gosh. I don't know who that hurts the most. You got 9 guys coming back. You're a veteran team now. You got 9 guys that played a good bit last year, and then you're adding 7th Woods. Your practices will be like what as these guys try to, fight and earn playing time? How much more intense do you think your practices will be this year with a veteran group, with so many guys who think they should be on the court during games?
Our practices are always pretty good from an intensity standpoint. We're all that experience you're talking about, where it kicks in right away. I mean, we're 5 minutes into a workout. I sense it, is how sharp we are, how not wrapped up in the emotion of the last play we are. We're always getting to the next play. We're always on it, so it's fun to be around. I've always said it, Phil. I get it. People love talent. I love talent. But if you're going to give me talent, I also want experience. That talent with no experience makes it difficult because of what I just said. No one knows what they're doing, regardless of their talent, and their emotions are still too tied into the previous play. So it creates these lulls and these moments that create failure. Right now, they're real competitive, and they're competitive in a healthy way. I tell players all the time, you guys didn't come here to compete against each other. You came here to compete with one another to help us compete against the other teams. They're not here to me and that guy. We're going after each other because there's a job on the line. We know that. That's what we signed up to coach and play, because it's like a family. We're trying to challenge our brother to make him tougher so he don't go down the block and get his tail kicked or run away from it. It's the same thing we're doing now. It's we're sharpening each other to make us as good as we can be. And those competitive practices that have that kind of maturity, that kind of experience on it, it creates, it makes lesser players elevate. It makes inexperienced players stick out like sore thumbs. And right now we've got a lot of that going on, where okay players, because of that competitiveness, are like elevated their play. And the guys that are brand new, they're trying, but they're sticking out like sore thumbs. They're getting beat to the ball. They're getting beat on physicality. You can see the body language, who's old and who's young, just by watching practice. You don't need to know who they are. You just watch practice, and the body language tells you, like, okay, that guy just got here and he's getting his tail kicked, without actually seeing the drill or whatever it may be. So I'm excited. I knock on wood. I've said this before, and I'm going to kind of say it again. I've never been somewhere where so many consecutive years where we cannot maintain the personality of our team throughout a year because of all kinds of stuff, injuries and just concussion. It's just incredible. But knock on wood, I hope we stay healthy. If we do, I'm going to enjoy being around this team.
All right, I've got 7 more questions, so we're going to stick with that group. We'll start with John Del Bianco and then Brad Muller. John?
Hey, Frank, good to see you. Thanks for doing this today. Starting tomorrow, you're going to learn a lot more about your 2 freshmen, Javon and Patrick, but what have they shown you so far over the last few months? What have you really learned about them, getting to be with them a lot more?
That they're going to be real good players here. They're different as people, but they both have a strength that sticks out like a sore thumb. They both want to be good. They don't pout. They're dealing with Alonzo Frink right now, and Wildens Levesque and Jayla Mccreary, and they're getting beat to the ball, but they never pout. They never, lay down. They got their moments where they look discouraged, but they come right back. They're both big. I mean, Javon has this unique ability to find a way to put the ball in the basket. Some guys look real good, the ball never goes in when it's competitive. He figures out a way to score. He made a basket in today's workout that I was like, holy cow, how'd he put that ball in the basket? But he's got to learn. He's used to being the biggest guy on the court, and so he only has to play with a certain aggression to impose his presence in a game. Now he's learning that he better play with a lot more aggression, a lot more consistently, if he wants to impose his presence on a drill in a practice. So he's going through that process. And then Pat's strong as an ox. I mean, he runs. He had a great play in yesterday's workout. He just outran everyone down the court. Saturday's workout. We didn't work out yesterday. We had the group stuff. There was a real competitive play. He was on defense. He made the defensive rotation to stop a basket, and then he turned around and outran everyone down the court and caught a hard pass for a layup. It got all the experienced guys jumping on him because they know what he just did. That's an impressive play for somebody so young to make. So I'm excited. I think we recruited both of them because we don't. When we go recruit, we don't just recruit guys that can help us now. We also recruit because of who they want to become and who we think they can become. And I want to be a part of that journey with them. Well, now that I'm around them, I think they can be even better than I ever envisioned them being if they stay true to what they're doing up to this point. So I think they're both going to be real good Gamecocks for us.
Brad?
Coach, from what you've seen in this strange offseason so far, who's made the biggest jump, or who do you need to make the biggest jump from last year going into this year to make an impact? And then on the other side, who are the biggest glue guys for you, even if they're not top scorers, top rebounders, that you feel like I just got to have them out there?
Yeah, the best glue guy we've had the last 2 years is Justin Minaya. I mean, he just commits very few mistakes, and he plays with an aggression and a consistency that's, as a coach, you trust in. So Justin's the best one there. As far as step forward, we need Keyshawn Bryant. He finished, if you go back and you look at his stats, the last 7 or 8 games when Justin got hurt, he took a step forward as a player. He averaged somewhere around 15 points a game. We need him to take a step forward, and he has. But he's done it. He's doing it right now in the gym just with us. He needs to do that against opponents and referees and cameras and everything else in there on a consistent for a whole season. But we need him, and these 2 names. I don't know if they're going to surprise you or not, but we need AJ Lawson and Jermaine Cousinard, both of those guys, to take big steps forward, because they're good players that have had success here. But, now they have to take another step, just like no different than what Sindarius did from sophomore to junior year. No different than, what Michael Carrera did junior to senior year. These guys, those 2 guys have played a lot of minutes in their time here. They've got to take another step as a basketball player, and they've got that kind of talent. That's what gets me excited. But Trey Hannibal has to take Trey Hannibal's got too much talent. He's too powerful, too athletic, too good a kid. He's got so much room for growth that if he can take that step forward, I think would really, really help, which helps us in exchange.
Dave?
Frank, you mentioned some of the injury concerns of years past. Is everybody healthy right now? Nobody has any nagging, off-season injuries?
Everyone's good, Dave. We've had which in today's day and age gets interesting. We've had a couple guys with head colds. Just the season's starting to change a little bit, and everyone took their flu shot. So now you don't know if it's flu, COVID. You've got no idea what's going on. But it's not COVID. It's just a couple guys with head cold. But outside of that, everything's fine.
Colin?
Yeah, Frank, this is kind of, you're wrapping up the summer without having an evaluation period. You have a couple guys you can't talk about in your recruiting class, but just, I wonder how recruiting's gone for you. Where do you feel like you are right now? When has the NCAA given you guys a timeline on when you guys might be allowed to get guys back on campus for visits?
I think recruiting is going great, Colin. I told you guys this during the Final Four, right after the Final Four. I was like, well, you get in sending to McDonald All-Americans. You just went to a Final Four. I'm like, well, there's a whole lot of schools that send McDonald All-Americans. They've been to 100 Final Fours. So it's, and I told you guys, you'll see the benefits of playing in a Final Four a couple years down the line, when that's how recruiting works. And I think that's exactly what's happened. There's a reason I feel real good about our roster right now. There's a stability to our roster that we haven't had in 3 years. I shouldn't say, that's not fair. We had it last year. We just had injuries. But the year before, I had to take some grad transfers. And grad transfers are awesome. But if you keep taking grad transfers, that means you got new guys coming every single year. And there's a stability, college basketball. I get the one and done part of it. And I've told you, if I can coach 5 of them, I'm in. But truth be told, college basketball is about watching those guys in their journey, whether it's 5 years, 4 years, 3 years, or whatever. And we've got a stability in our roster right now, which I enjoy. Which gives your team a chance to be healthy mentally, not just physically. And then in recruiting, I think it continues. I think we're in a real good place. I'm really happy with the guys that you've mentioned that obviously I can't speak about, or you insinuated that I can't speak about. We're real happy with the guys that we have recruited that are here, how they fit in, how they grow. It's, that they are who we are. It's so that makes it for an easier marriage as you're going through the journey. And then the guys down the road, not just in the, I don't even know what class, what's the next class, 21? I don't even know.
Yeah, 21.
Yeah, not in the class, not just in 21, but even 22 and 23. We're deeply involved with some really good players that, by the way, on that question, I got a kick. Bruce came in all worked up because one of those guys that you insinuated, I guess he continues to move up rankings, for lack of better words. And I guess one of those so-called recruiting experts put out there that South Carolina got a steal. I'm like, really? Like, am I supposed to recruit bad players? I mean, it's like, I don't know what I don't know. I think that's so ignorant.
But makes you feel better. I don't have any say in recruiting rankings or anything like that.
Yeah, I could. Bruce came in all worked up. I'm like, Bruce, I just laughed. I said, Bruce, that's why you can't pay attention to them guys. If those guys were so good, universities would hire them to be their recruiting coordinators. They make them work a lot less. But we're in a real good place, man. I'm real happy with our staff. I'm really happy with, we've got, even though Perry retired and Will came in, there's some consistency in our staff, which we haven't had leading into the Final Four. We had lost, Brad after a year, then Lamont, and then Fig right after the Final Four. So now the staff, Bruce and Chuck, have been in place now for going on 4 years together. So from a teaching standpoint, from who we're recruiting, all those things are in place. So we're in a much better place.
3 more, Derek, and then Pete, and then Mike. Go ahead, Derek.
Coach, you're talking about your staff there. You announced yesterday that Steele's coming back. I recall when he was leaving on the coach's show one night, you talked about how much you thought of him and what he was capable of in the business. What can he add beyond just familiarity with how you want things done? What do you think is the benefit for the program of getting Brian back involved?
Yeah, it's whenever you're going to lose someone on your staff, finding a viable replacement is the biggest concern. And Jay Gibbons, I've known Jay since he was a young kid, and his dad's like a mentor to me. And Jay was tremendous for us. And Jay, he had a spirit about him, and the players loved him. And he, when Jay made the decision that he, which I fully understood, he wants to get back to coaching. I mean, he's been stuck in a back room with a computer, for the last 4 years, and it's not who he is. He wants to get back to coaching, and his fiance lives in Atlanta. They've got a 3-year-old together, and he just wants to be around his son, which it's what happens. It's part of the journey, and I've got to help them deal with those decisions. But once he made his decision, I picked up the phone and called a couple people that I thought would be great for the job, Brian being one of them. And, Brian is a big part of how we built this program. His toughness, his discipline, his love for the Gamecocks. I mean, he was tremendous as a player. And then we kept him around here, and I started seeing him because he always wanted to coach. So we kept him around as a student assistant when he tore up his knee. And I started seeing him through the eyes of a coach, not just a player. And I said, he's going to be really good at this. And so, when his time here ended after his got his master's degree, Bart Lundy up at Queens College, who's one of the top 8-10 programs, Division II in the country, needed to hire somebody. And I called him, and he gave Brian a chance as a second assistant. And Brian just home run. I mean, he just tremendous and got a great chance to coach and be himself. And Bart gave him ownership of the program. And so when I called Brian, I was like, let me call him, because I think he'd be real good, because he believes in who we are. And he'll be great. His spirit, to have him around here Heck, I couldn't hang up the phone without, him saying, I'm in. I'm like, Brian, he's like, I'm in. So it's going to be great. He's got to learn the computer system, which he has an idea about because he helped us with that when he was here. But he's got to learn the computer system for the videos. But he's such a go-getter, man, that he'll figure that out in the next 2 weeks. But then his pride, his passion, his connection with who we are in this program, it's going to be. I'm excited. Sad to see Jay go, but at the same time, excited to get a guy like Brian back on our staff.
Pete.
Frank, two things. One, before COVID changed everything, you guys had that NCAA letter come through. I was wondering if that any resolution had come of that, and then when we get together, maybe in April or something like that for another one of these, is there somebody on this team who we're not talking about, who we are going to be talking about because of the steps forward that he took?
When you say the letter, you're talking about the
involving the college basketball trial. Yeah.
Pete, I haven't heard anything about that.
Okay. Yeah. Just checking.
Yeah. You and I, Pete, want that chapter to be closed.
Sure.
I'm like, but it is what it is. We fell in the umbrella, and I understand, and we've talked about it, but no, I have not heard a single word about that.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Back then. Jayla Mccreary. Jaylen's been really impressive in practice so far. I have no idea how, but his jump shot's going in the basket right now. And he obviously spent a lot of time in COVID working on finding confidence in it, and he did. And now he's playing with an aggression, and offensively, he's one of those Sean Marion kind of herky-jerky offensive players that it doesn't look great, but the ball goes in the basket. Yeah. But that's probably the guy that I would say we're going to end up talking about in the spring, that everyone's going to want to know what the heck happened. How did he get to do all that stuff so much better? I think he's vastly improved.
And Mike?
Frank, I know you've probably had more time these last couple of months to be able to reflect on a season than probably in years past. When you look back to last season, you guys were able to pick things up at times. But what was the missing piece outside of obviously injuries, which has hurt you guys over the last couple of years in particular? What was holding this team back from being able to take that step in terms of being able to be the team that you envision this team being able to get to?
Early on, it was immaturity. I mean, I don't say that in a negative way. It is what it is. It's we went down to Mexico and got beat twice. Got one of the games we were not competitive at all. Then we lost to two really good teams, but one of them we're not competitive at all. That was embarrassing. But that wasn't acceptable. And and then we obviously lost to Stetson again, maturity. So that was chapter one of our story. But you can't write that chapter without including the great wins that took place in that time period too. Whether it's a lot of people around here don't give credit for winning at UMass, but that's a heck of a win. And then the obvious games, Clemson and Virginia on road games. And then a team like Gardner-Webb, who was a real good team. Well, unfortunately, at the time, they were good. At the end of the year, they kind of wheels came off a little bit, but they were really good. And so early on, that immaturity led to some inconsistencies. But then now you look into this, now we get into conference play, and we settled in, we grew up, and we're rolling. I'm telling you, we're playing real good ball. But, we lost a one possession game at Mississippi State, a one possession game at Alabama. You're up 10 at Vanderbilt. And let me not publicly say what I think happened in that game or get me in trouble again. Just we didn't handle a couple moments. Part of it was that injuries took place. So we had to have different personnel, but that's an excuse. We're still in one possession games. We got to figure out a way to close those games out. LSU came in here and beat us. I mean, we fought, but we didn't play well enough to win that game. We played a really hard league. We went 10-8 in a really, really hard league, and there's nothing to be sorry about there. I wish like heck that we could have been 12-6, but we were 10-8. And I know I'm leaving. There's another game we lost there. I'm leaving that out. That was like a hard game down at the end. I can't remember which one it was, but I thought our team last year handled, again, we took on the challenges, whether it was losing, whether it was immaturity, understanding personalities, whatever it may be. I thought we became a good basketball team because of the challenges of the schedule and the season. We didn't run away from it. And so I wish we would have played in the conference tournament. We were going to be down Mike Kotsar. He wouldn't have played, but the guys were excited. And we had just gotten Justin back, and it'd been very easy for the guys that have been like dragging their heads all week, because here we go again. Now we got Justin back. Now Mike goes down, but we had a great week of practice leading into the obvious day where everything got shut down. So I'm excited. I'm excited for what last year's team did. And I'm excited for those guys that are back, that have all taken steps forwards as players. And, hopefully we can keep maturing and deal with some of the non-conference immaturity issues a little bit better. Like there was a game last year that there's 2 games we got whooped. One of them we didn't try. That was Wichita State. The other one was Houston. We tried. We just couldn't sustain, and we couldn't score. We just miss. And eventually the physicality that they play with just created separation. And what's great is their guy, the point guard who scored 20 against us, I don't think he scored 20 in the next month. But, that's kind of the way the worm turned that day. So, but I'm Mike, last year was, as a coach, what you look for in a team. It took on the challenges, never pouted, never complained, never made excuses. We grew up, we dealt with it, and we moved forward. And that's what last year's team did. And I hope that carries over into this year.